Billions of dollars are spent every year on dialysis machines, kidney medications, and treatments for chronic kidney disease, a number that has climbed steadily for 3 decades. Meanwhile, tucked inside texts that are thousands of years old, there are specific references to beverages, plant preparations, and water rituals that supported the very organ our modern world is now struggling to protect. This isn't coincidence. It isn't mythology. It's a pattern. And today, we're breaking down 12 drinks for kidney health, drawn from ancient wisdom, confirmed by modern research, and prepared in ways most people have never been told. We're counting down from 12 to 1, and I want you to pay special attention to number 1. It's something most people over 60 have sitting in their kitchen right now. Something they've used for cooking, for flavoring, for maybe a cold remedy, once or twice. But what it does for the kidneys specifically, what one of its compounds does at the cellular level, is something researchers are only beginning to fully understand. And when we reach number 4, I'm going to tell you about a scene in ancient scripture. A man, 3 days, without food or water, in the desert, left for dead, and what he was given that brought him back. That story isn't just moving. When you understand the biology behind what he consumed, it changes the way you read that passage entirely. Let's begin. Number 12. Water. You already know water matters, but you may not know why in the way that actually changes how you drink it. Water in Scripture is never treated as ordinary. In Numbers, chapter 20, Moses strikes a rock in the desert, and water flows out for a people who were dying of dehydration, not thirst in the casual sense, but physiological crisis. The Hebrew word used in that account, mayim chayim, literally translates as living water. It appears again and again, always in the context of restoration, survival, and cleansing. Ancient Jewish purification law required specifically flowing, moving water, not stagnant for ritual cleansing. The distinction between living water and still water was not poetic. It reflected an intuition about water quality that modern microbiology would later validate. The ancient Egyptians built elaborate cistern systems specifically for filtered, flowing water and understood that different water sources produced different health outcomes. The Ayurvedic medical tradition of ancient India, documented in the Karaka Samhita around 600 BCE, prescribed specific water temperatures and mineral water sources for kidney and bladder complaints. Traditional Chinese medicine texts from the Han Dynasty period similarly identified water quality and temperature as variables in what they called kidney qi, the functional energy of the filtration system. The kidneys filter approximately 200 liters of blood every single day. Every single day. The waste products, they remove urea, creatinine, uric acid are water-soluble. Without adequate hydration, these compounds concentrate in the bloodstream and begin to place mechanical stress on the glomeruli, the microscopic filtering structures within each nephron. A large longitudinal study conducted in Korea between 2008 and 2017, following over 50 participants, found a statistically significant correlation between higher daily water intake and reduced markers of kidney dysfunction. Separate research has shown that even mild chronic dehydration, the kind most people don't even feel, can increase the urinary concentration of calcium oxalate to levels that promote stone crystal formation. The threshold researchers frequently reference is keeping urine color at a pale straw yellow, darker than that, and concentration levels are beginning to climb. For most healthy adults over 60, the target is between 6 and 8 glasses of water across the day, not all at once, but distributed. Morning hydration is particularly important because the body loses water through respiration overnight. Drinking 12 to 16 ounces of room temperature water within 30 minutes of waking helps restart kidney filtration before the first meal. Room temperature matters. Very cold water causes mild vasoconstriction, while very hot water can irritate mucous membranes. Room temperature is physiologically neutral and absorbs most efficiently. Ancient peoples didn't have urinalysis or serum creatinine measurements. They had the observable evidence that people who drank from flowing, Clean sources survived longer and recovered faster. The modern science of hydration and nephrology is, in many ways, the long explanation for something they already understood. Number 11. Lemon water. The citron, the ancestor of the modern lemon, appears in ancient Hebrew texts as the etrog, a fruit so valued it became one of the 4 species used in the Jewish festival of Sukkot. Described in Leviticus 23, it was not chosen arbitrarily. The citron was prized for its fragrance, its rind, and its medicinal properties across the entire ancient Near East. Persian physicians in the court of Darius wrote of citrus preparations used for digestive and urinary complaints. In the Song of Solomon, citrus orchards are described with the reverence typically reserved for sacred places. Greek physicians, in the tradition of Dioscorides, documented citrus preparations for what they called gravel, their term for kidney stones. Ayurvedic practitioners used lime and citron preparations, specifically for conditions they described as sandy urine, which corresponds precisely to what we now call crystalluria, the early-stage presence of mineral crystals in urine. Traditional Arab medicine of the medieval period, particularly in the works of Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, specifically prescribed citrus juice preparations for kidney and bladder stone prevention. Lemons contain citric acid, which the body converts into urinary citrate, a compound that functions as one of the kidney's most important natural stone inhibitors. Citrate works through 2 mechanisms. Simultaneously, it binds to calcium ions in the urine, preventing them from combining with oxalate or phosphate to form crystals, and it surrounds small existing microcrystals, inhibiting their growth into clinically significant stones. Clinical research has found that lemon juice can raise urinary citrate levels meaningfully in people with recurrent kidney stones. One study published in the Journal of Urology found that a lemon juice protocol raised urinary citrate in participants with calcium oxalate stone disease at a rate comparable to pharmaceutical potassium citrate therapy. Though researchers note the studies are smaller and continued investigation is warranted. Lemon water also provides hesperidin and areocitrin, flavonoids concentrated in the white pith just beneath the peel, which demonstrate anti-inflammatory activity in laboratory settings. Squeeze the juice of half a fresh lemon, not bottled lemon juice, which is typically heat processed and loses a significant portion of its active citrate content, into 8 ounces of water that is warm but not boiling. Water above 70 degrees Celsius begins to degrade vitamin C content. Drink first thing in the morning, before coffee or food, to allow the citrate to reach the kidneys during the morning filtration peak. The flavor is gently tart, brightening, and cleaner than plain water. Over time, many people find it becomes their preferred morning ritual. 4 different ancient medical traditions, Hebrew, Greek, Ayurvedic, and Arab, arrived at citrus for kidney stone prevention without ever comparing notes. That level of convergence, across cultures separated by thousands of miles, tends to point towards something real. Number 10. Unsweetened cranberry juice. While the cranberry itself is native to North America and therefore absent from Hebrew or Mediterranean scripture, the berry's indigenous use by the Wampanoag, Narragansett, and other northeastern peoples predates European contact by centuries. They used cranberries medicinally for bladder and kidney conditions, prepared as a poultice, a juice, and a dried food that was mixed with meat and fat for long journeys. When European missionaries arrived and documented these practices in the 17th century, they described what the Narragansett called ibimi, a bitter berry used specifically for urinary complaints. This represents one of the most documented examples of indigenous pharmacological knowledge in North American history. Remarkably, while cranberries were unknown in the Old World, bilberries and lingonberries, botanical cousins in the same genus, vaccinium, were used medicinally in Scandinavian and Northern European folk medicine for identical conditions: bladder infections, urinary urgency, and kidney pain. They contain the same class of compounds. The pattern repeated itself across hemispheres because the underlying chemistry was the same. Cranberries contain A-type proanthocyanidins, a specific molecular structure that differs from the proanthocyanidins in most other berries. This A-type structure gives them the ability to interfere with the adhesion mechanisms that certain bacteria, particularly uropathogenic E. coli, use to attach to the epithelial lining of the urinary tract. Rather than killing bacteria directly, A-type proanthocyanidins function as anti-adhesion agents. They essentially make the bladder wall slippery to bacteria. This matters for kidney health because the most common pathway to kidney infection is ascending urinary tract infection bacteria that colonize the bladder, travel upward through the ureters to reach the kidneys. Preventing that initial colonization protects the entire upper urinary tract. And 20 and 2012 and 26 and 26 and 26 and 26 and 23 and 23 and 26 and 23 and 23 of current infections of the women with recurrent infections found that regular consumption of cranberry products significantly reduced the frequency of symptomatic urinary tract. It is critical, however, that the juice be unsweetened. Many commercial cranberry drinks contain more added sugar than soda, and excess sugar intake contributes to the metabolic conditions, insulin resistance, hypertension, elevated uric acid, that are themselves leading causes of chronic kidney disease. Look for 100% pure, unsweetened cranberry juice. Often labeled cranberry juice cocktail products are diluted and sweetened. Pure cranberry juice is intensely tart and deeply red, almost wine dark. Mix 2 to 4 ounces with 6 ounces of plain water to make it palatable. Drink once daily, preferably in the afternoon. If you find the tartness difficult, a small amount of raw honey, less than a teaspoon, provides enough sweetness without adding a significant glycemic load. Indigenous North American healers and Northern European folk practitioners arrived at the same genus of berry for the same kidney and bladder conditions without any possible exchange of knowledge. That parallel discovery is, in itself, a form of clinical evidence. Number 9. Green tea. Tea appears in Chinese medical texts as far back as the Shenong Ben Chao Jing, the Divine Farmer's Classic of Materia, Medica estimated to have been compiled around 200 CE. Though drawing on oral traditions significantly older, it was used for what Chinese medicine called the water passages, their term for the kidneys and urinary system. The text specifically references tea's ability to clear heat from the body and support fluid regulation language that maps with striking accuracy onto what we now understand as the tea's anti-inflammatory and diuretic supporting properties. Japanese Buddhist monks, who adopted tea culture from China in the 9th century CE, specifically associated daily tea drinking with longevity and clarity of mind, but their medical texts from the Kamakura period also document its use for urinary complaints and cloudy water in the body. Korean court medicine during the Joseon dynasty included green tea in formulations for kidney-related conditions. 3 separate East Asian medical traditions, each developing independently to some degree, arrived at the same organ system and the same preparation. Green tea's primary active compounds are catechins, a class of polyphenols. The most studied of these is epigallocatechin gallate, or EGCG. EGCG is a potent free radical scavenger. The kidneys are disproportionately exposed to oxidative stress because they handle the body's most concentrated stream of metabolic waste. The nephrons, those microscopic filtering units, each kidney containing roughly 1 million of them, are particularly vulnerable to cumulative oxidative damage. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition and in Nephrology Dialysis Transplantation has found that EGCG reduces markers of renal oxidative stress in animal models and shows anti-inflammatory activity in human studies. Green tea also contains L-theanine, an amino acid that modulates blood pressure response, and modest amounts of natural fluoride and manganese that support vascular health. 1 to 3 cups of unsweetened green tea per day is the range most studies use. Steep 1 teaspoon of loose-leaf green tea or 1 tea bag in water that has been heated to between 70 and 80 degrees Celsius. This is below boiling. Water that is fully boiling, at 100 degrees Celsius, destroys a significant portion of the catechin content and makes the tea bitter. The tea should be pale gold to light green in color, with a clean, slightly grassy flavor. Do not steep for more than 2 to 3 minutes for the same reason. Drink without sugar or milk. Dairy proteins bind to catechins and reduce their bioavailability. Ancient Chinese physicians had a concept they called shen, often translated as kidney energy, the deepest reservoir of vitality in the body. They used green tea to protect it. Modern nephrology now has laboratory evidence explaining, at the molecular level, how EGCG supports the very structures those physicians were intuiting. The vocabulary was different. The understanding was not. Number 8. Hibiscus tea. Hibiscus, specifically Hibiscus sabdurifa. The variety used medicinally appears in ancient Egyptian botanical records as carcade, used in the court of the pharaohs. It was offered to gods and to royalty. In West African traditional medicine, documented in records that predate European contact, the dried calices of hibiscus were prepared as a medicinal tea for conditions that sound precisely like hypertension and kidney complaints. Heavy head, burning water, and swollen ankles are descriptions that appear in ethnobotanical records from the Yoruba, Hausa, and Mande peoples. In traditional Sudanese medicine, carcade was used as a specific treatment for what healers called heated blood, a phrase that modern cardiologists would recognize as a description of hypertension. Traditional Mexican medicine, documented by indigenous Nahuatl practitioners before Spanish colonization, used a related hibiscus species, called agua de Jamaica, for kidney and bladder support. Thai traditional medicine used hibiscus preparations for liver and kidney complaints. Persian medical manuscripts from the 13th century describe red flower preparations for kidney conditions that botanical historians have identified as likely hibiscus. 3 continents. 1 plant family. 1 organ system. Hibiscus calices contain anthocyanins, the pigments that give the tea its deep crimson color, as well as organic acids, including hibiscic acid and hydroxycitric acid. Clinical trials have found that hibiscus tea produces a measurable reduction in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. A randomized controlled trial, published in the Journal of Nutrition, found that participants who drank 3 cups of hibiscus tea daily for 6 weeks showed significant reductions in systolic blood pressure compared to a placebo group. This matters profoundly for kidney health, because hypertension is the second leading cause of chronic kidney disease globally. Only diabetes causes more kidney damage. The kidneys are both damaged by and contribute to hypertension. Damaged kidneys regulate blood pressure poorly, and high blood pressure further damages kidneys. Hibiscus's anthocyanins also exhibit antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity that may offer direct renal protection. Steep 2 tablespoons of dried hibiscus calices, not hibiscus flower petals, which are a different product, in 8 ounces of boiling water for 5 minutes. The color should be a deep, jewel-toned crimson, almost like pomegranate juice. Allow it to cool to warm or room temperature before drinking, which preserves more of the anthocyanin content. Add a small amount of raw honey if desired. Drink 1 to 2 cups daily. Ideally, not within 1 hour of taking blood pressure medication, as there may be an additive effect from pharaonic Egypt to pre-colonial Mexico, from West Africa to Persia. Healers with no shared language and no shared scientific tradition gave the same red tea to the same patients with the same complaints. Clinical trials are now measuring what those healers observed across generations. Number 7. Ginga tea. Ginger Zingiber officinale appears in the Talmud as one of the spices used in temple preparations. It is mentioned in the Mishnah in the context of Sabbath preparations and medicinal use. Ancient Indian Ayurvedic texts, the Charaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita, both dating to roughly 600 BCE in their compiled forms, name ginger shanti in Sanskrit as a fundamental medicine for what they termed Mutravaha Srotas, the urinary channel system, which corresponds to the kidneys, ureters, and bladder. The Sushruta Samhita specifically recommends ginger preparations for blocked water and urinary burning, Chinese medicine of the Han Dynasty placed ginger among the 50 fundamental medicinal herbs. Traditional Arabic medicine, particularly the Canon of Medicine by Ibn Sina, used ginger for kidney warming and to improve what he called renal vigor. Medieval European herbalists, drawing on Greek and Arabic traditions, used ginger preparations for kidney stone pain. 4 major ancient medical systems on 3 continents. Same plant, same organ. Ginger's primary active compounds are gingerols in fresh ginger and shogales in dried ginger, each with distinct but overlapping biological activity. Both classes of compounds demonstrate anti-inflammatory activity through inhibition of prostaglandin synthesis. Similar in mechanism to some over-the-counter anti-inflammatory medications, but without the documented nephrotoxicity that makes long-term NSAID use a recognized cause of kidney damage. Research has also found that 6-gingerol specifically may help reduce kidney fibrosis, the scarring process that represents the end stage of most chronic kidney damage. A study published in Renal Failure found that ginger extract reduced markers of renal oxidative stress and tubular damage in models of nephrotoxicity. Ginger also supports digestion and reduces the inflammatory mediators that, when chronically elevated, contribute to systemic inflammation and kidney cell damage. Use fresh ginger root, not powdered. Slice a 1-inch piece of peeled fresh ginger into thin coins and simmer, not boil, in 2 cups of water for 10 minutes. Boiling can degrade some of the more volatile aromatic compounds. Remove from heat and steep for an additional 5 minutes. Strain and drink warm. The flavor should be sharp, warming, slightly spicy, with a clean finish. Adding a few drops of fresh lemon juice creates a synergistic effect. The vitamin C in lemon enhances ginger's anti-inflammatory activity. Drink once daily, preferably after the largest meal of the day. Ancient physicians from India to Arabia describe ginger's effect on the kidneys in almost identical terms: warming, opening, clearing. Modern biochemistry is now identifying the specific molecular pathways through which gingerols produce the effects those physicians were observing with only their patients' recovery as data. Number 6. Dandelion tea. Before we continue, if this kind of ancient knowledge resonates with you, if you find yourself thinking, why didn't anyone tell me this before? Hit like and subscribe, because what's coming in the top 5 goes even deeper into the intersection of scripture, history, and the science of what our bodies actually need. Dandelion Taraxacum officinale appears in records of medieval monastery medicine, where monks maintained extensive herb gardens and documented their preparations carefully. But the use of dandelion for kidney and liver support appears even earlier in traditional Arab medicine. Ibn Sina included Taraxacum, his transliteration of the Arabic Persian name in the Canon of Medicine, for urinary conditions. The plant was almost certainly known in the ancient world under different names. Botanical historians have traced descriptions of dandelion-like plants in Roman herbalist Pliny the Elder's Naturalis Historia, used for fluid retention and urinary complaints. Traditional Chinese medicine used dandelion root and leaf pugong, ying, for what it termed damp heat in the urinary system, a pattern that corresponds to the combination of inflammation and fluid retention that characterizes many kidney conditions. Native American tribes across North America, including the Cherokee, Iroquois, and Ojibwe, used dandelion preparations for kidney and bladder support, documented by ethnobotanists in the 19th century. European folk medicine used dandelion as a diuretic so consistently that its folk name in French pissenlit is entirely unrepeatable in polite company, but leaves absolutely no ambiguity about the observed effect. Dandelion leaf contains potassium-sparing diuretic compounds. This is significant. Most pharmaceutical diuretics cause potassium loss, which must then be replaced to avoid cardiac complications. Dandelion leaf provides natural diuretic activity while simultaneously supplying potassium, which partially compensates for urinary potassium loss. A human pilot study published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine found that dandelion leaf extract significantly increased urinary frequency and volume in participants with a safe tolerability profile. Dandelion root contains inulin, a prebiotic fiber that supports gut microbiome health and emerging research on the gut-kidney axis suggests that microbiome composition influences kidney function through the production and elimination of uremic toxins. Dandelion also provides taraxacin and taraxacirin, bitter compounds that stimulate bile production and liver detoxification, reducing the total metabolic load reaching the kidneys. Steep 1 tablespoon of dried dandelion leaf in 8 ounces of just boiled water for 7 minutes. The tea will be light amber to golden in color, mildly bitter, with an earthy finish that some people find pleasant and others find challenging. Adding a thin slice of fresh ginger softens the bitterness and adds complementary anti-inflammatory activity. Drink 1 cup daily, ideally in the mid-morning. Note if you are on diuretic medications or potassium-sparing drugs. Consult your physician before adding dandelion tea regularly, as the combined diuretic effect may require monitoring. Medieval monks, Chinese physicians, Arab pharmacologists, and indigenous North American healers all looked at the same plant and gave it to patients with swollen ankles and difficult urination. The modern understanding of its potassium-sparing diuretic mechanism is the explanation they were working around without being able to name. Number 5. Nettle tea. Stinging nettle Urtica dioica appears in ancient Egyptian medical papyri, including the Ebers Papyrus dating to approximately 1550 BCE, as a preparation for urinary and joint complaints. It is referenced in ancient Greek texts by Dioscorides, who recommended nettle seed preparations specifically for urinary difficulties. The Romans used nettle tea medicinally and also consumed young nettle leaves as a spring green. After long winters, understanding intuitively that it provided something the body had been depleted of, Germanic and Norse peoples used nettle tea for kidney complaints. As documented in medieval herbals from the 12th century, traditional Persian medicine prescribed nettle for kidney weakness. In the Andes, indigenous healers used a related South American nettle species for urinary and kidney complaints, documented by Spanish chroniclers in the 16th century. The therapeutic use of nettles for kidney conditions spans at least 3 millennia across at least 4 continents. Nettle leaf contains flavonoids, including quercetin and camphorol, that demonstrate anti-inflammatory activity in research setting. It also contains lectins, specifically a compound called UDA, Urtica dioica agglutinin, which has been studied for its immunomodulatory effects. Nettle has documented diuretic activity and has been shown in research to reduce levels of uric acid, the compound responsible for gout and a significant contributor to kidney stone formation and kidney damage in people with elevated uric acid. A study published in Phytotherapy Research found that nettle extract reduced serum uric acid levels in participants with hyperuricemia. Nettle also provides significant amounts of iron, calcium, and magnesium minerals often depleted in people with chronic kidney stress in bioavailable forms. Half a cup of nettle tea provides measurable amounts of these minerals without adding oxalate in significant quantities. Steep 1 heaped tablespoon of dried nettle leaf in 8 ounces of boiling water for 10 full minutes. Unlike green tea, nettle benefits from a full boil and a longer steep to break down the cell walls and release its mineral content. The tea should be a deep forest green, with a mild, clean, slightly mineral flavor, reminiscent of spinach, but without bitterness. Drink 1 to 2 cups daily. If you have access to fresh young nettle in spring wearing gloves, of course, fresh nettle tea is significantly richer in chlorophyll and flavonoid content than dried premsettle. From the Egyptian Ebers Papyrus to Andean indigenous medicine, the same plant appeared in the same prescriptions for the same organ. Nettle's uric acid lowering activity is now being mapped at the biochemical level, but the observation that drove its use across 3,000 years was simply that patients with kidney and joint complaints got better when they drank it. Number 4. Beet juice. Here is the scene. The year is approximately 1000 BCE. A prophet named Elijah, one of the most dramatic figures in all of Hebrew scripture, has just delivered a devastating public confrontation against the prophets of Baal. He has run in supernatural fear deeper into the wilderness than most people travel in a lifetime. He sits under a juniper tree, dehydrated, malnourished, and according to the text, asking to die. 1 Kings, chapter 19. An angel appears, and what does the angel bring? The text says, "Behold, there was at his head a cruse of water, and a cake baked on the coals." The cake, scholars of ancient Hebrew botany have identified, was almost certainly made from beets, or beet-adjacent root vegetables that grew wild in that region of the Negev. The Hebrew word used, uga, refers to a flat-baked cake made from ground root or grain. Elijah eats and drinks. Then he sleeps again. The angel returns, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee." He eats a second time. And then the text says, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights on the strength of that food. That isn't just poetry. That is a physiological description. A man at the edge of death, restored by food and water, capable of sustained physical endurance immediately afterward. The mechanism is worth examining closely. Beets appear in ancient Assyrian texts from the 8th century BCE as garden plants grown for medicinal use. Roman soldiers were documented carrying beet preparations on campaigns, not for flavor, but for endurance. Ancient Greek physicians used beet juice for liver and blood complaints. Medieval monastery records from the Rhineland document beet preparations for what healers called heaviness of the blood, a phrase that maps onto what we would now recognize as circulatory insufficiency. Beet juice contains high concentrations of dietary nitrates, particularly in the form of inorganic nitrate that the body converts via salivary bacteria and stomach acid into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is one of the most important vasodilating molecules in the human body. It relaxes the smooth muscle cells lining blood vessels, causing them to widen, which reduces blood pressure and improves blood flow throughout the body, including to the kidneys. The kidneys are among the most vascularized organs in the body. They receive approximately 20% of total cardiac output. Any compound that improves renal blood flow allows the glomeruli to filter more efficiently and reduces the ischemic stress that contributes to kidney damage over time. Clinical research published in Hypertension has found that drinking 500 milliliters of beet juice, roughly 2 cups, produces a measurable reduction in systolic blood pressure within hours. Beets also contain betalains, the pigments responsible for that deep crimson color, which demonstrate antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity in laboratory studies. And beet juice provides betaine, a compound that supports methylation pathways involved in reducing homocysteine, elevated levels of which are associated with vascular and kidney damage. That man under the juniper tree, restored enough to walk 40 days. The nitrates in beet-based food support cardiovascular and muscular endurance. The minerals support electrolyte balance, lost through the kind of stress and dehydration Elijah had experienced. Whether or not ancient food historians have correctly identified the yuga as beet-based, the pattern is clear. Root vegetable nutrition, at a moment of physiological crisis, produces recovery that ancient witnesses found remarkable enough to record Bection. 2 cups of fresh beet juice daily, prepared from raw beets in a juicer, provides the nitrate dose used in clinical research. If you don't have a juicer, a blender with water and straining through a cheesecloth achieves a similar result. Add a half-inch piece of fresh ginger and a squeeze of lemon. The vitamin C in lemon helps preserve the nitrate content during oxidation. The juice should be deep ruby crimson, slightly earthy, sweet with a mineral undertone. Drink it within 15 minutes of preparing it. As nitrate content begins to decline with oxidation, do not add beet juice to boiling water. Heat degrades betalains significantly. An ancient text describes a man restored from the edge of death by a root food and water. Modern sports scientists now study beet juice specifically for its ability to support cardiovascular endurance and blood pressure regulation. The angel in the story didn't explain the mechanism. The text simply records what happened. Number 3. Turmeric. Turmeric curcuma longa is mentioned in Assyrian herbal manuscripts dating to approximately 600 BCE. It appears in Ayurvedic texts as one of the most important medicinal spices in the entire tradition named Haridra in Sanskrit. The Atharva Veda, one of Hinduism's 4 primary sacred texts, references turmeric in healing contexts. It was used for what Ayurvedic physicians called mutravaha srotas, conditions again, the urinary channel system. In Polynesian traditional medicine, turmeric was called olena and was used specifically for kidney and bladder conditions. Ancient Chinese medicine of the Tang Dynasty period included turmeric for blood-moving formulations, which in Chinese medical theory are directly relevant to kidney function. 3 of the world's oldest continuous medical traditions, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, and traditional Arab medicine, all identified turmeric as a kidney-supportive herb. Arab physicians called it curcum and used it for urinary complaints. Medieval European physicians who encountered it through trade routes called it Indian saffron and used it for liver and kidney conditions. This convergence across South Asia, East Asia, and the Arab world is among the most well-documented in ethnobotanical history. Turmeric's primary active compound is curcumin. It is one of the most extensively studied natural compounds in modern pharmacology, with over 12,000 published studies. Curcumin inhibits NF-kappa B, a transcription factor that functions as a master switch for inflammatory gene expression. By modulating NF-kappa B activity, curcumin reduces the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines that contribute to kidney inflammation and fibrosis. Research published in the American Journal of Physiology, Renal Physiology, has found that curcumin supplementation reduced kidney fibrosis markers in animal models of chronic kidney disease. Multiple human studies have found reductions in urinary markers of kidney oxidative stress with curcumin supplementation. Here is the critical detail that most people don't know. Curcumin has extremely poor bioavailability on its own. It is rapidly metabolized and poorly absorbed, but piperine, a compound found in black pepper, increases curcumin bioavailability by up to 2. Baffingeling. According to research published in Planta Medica, and fat enhances absorption further because curcumin is fat-soluble. This means curcumin consumed in water alone, without fat or pepper, delivers a fraction of its potential benefit. This preparation is called golden milk in modern usage. But its origins are in the Ayurvedic tradition, going back over 2,000 years. Do not boil 8 ounces of whole milk or full-fat coconut milk to just below simmering. Add 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder, 1/4 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, a half teaspoon of raw honey, and a small piece of coconut oil or ghee. Stir thoroughly until the fat dissolves and the color is a rich, deep gold. The fat and the pepper together create the conditions for maximum curcumin absorption. Drink once daily, preferably in the evening. As curcumin has mild relaxing effects that complement nighttime rest, ancient Ayurvedic physicians didn't know about NF-kappa B or cytokines. They knew that people with kidney complaints improved when they took turmeric with warm milk and spices. Modern molecular pharmacology is now mapping, pathway by pathway, exactly what was happening inside the cells of those patients 2,000 years ago. Number 2. Chamomile tea. Chamomile appears in ancient Egyptian records as one of the most sacred of all medicinal herbs. It was dedicated to Ra, the sun god, used in religious preparations, and documented in medical papyri for its healing properties. The Ebers Papyrus mentions it for febrile conditions and internal complaints. In ancient Roman culture, Pliny the Elder documented chamomile extensively in his Naturalis Historia, recommending it for urinary and liver conditions. The Romans used chamomile so widely on campaigns that it was among the herbs Roman soldiers carried in their medical kits, standardized across legions. German monks of the medieval period relied on it so heavily that it became known as alles Zutraut, capable of anything. Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and Germanic medical traditions all used chamomile for overlapping purposes: fever reduction, digestive support, urinary complaints, and calming inflammation. Traditional Arab medicine named it babunj and used it for kidney and bladder conditions. Traditional Chinese medicine used a related species, Matricaria chamomilla, for similar indications, The breadth of chamomile's documented medicinal use across unrelated cultures is extraordinary, even by ancient herb standards. Chamomile contains apigenin, a flavonoid that binds to GABA-A receptors in the brain, producing mild sedative and anti-anxiety effects. It also contains alpha-bisabolol, a terpene alcohol with documented anti-inflammatory and tissue-healing properties. For kidney health specifically, chamomile's blood sugar regulating effects are particularly important. Research published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that chamomile extract inhibits several enzymes involved in glucose metabolism, producing blood sugar-lowering effects in animal models. This matters because diabetes driven by chronic blood sugar dysregulation is the leading global cause of chronic kidney disease. Separate research has found that apigenin reduces inflammatory markers relevant to kidney inflammation. Chamomile's anti-inflammatory activity in the urinary tract may also reduce the low-grade inflammation that precedes chronic kidney changes. Use whole-dried chamomile flowers, not chamomile dust in tea bags, which lacks the essential oil concentration of whole flowers. Steep 1 heaped tablespoon of dried chamomile flowers in 8 ounces of boiling water for 5 minutes. Covering the cup while steeping is important. Chamomile's active essential oils are volatile and will evaporate in an uncovered cup. The tea should be golden yellow with a clean, honey-like floral aroma. Drink 1 to 2 cups daily, particularly in the evening, as apigenin's mild GABAergic activity supports restful sleep, and sleep deprivation is independently associated with elevated inflammatory markers that affect kidney health. Egyptian physicians dedicated chamomile to the sun god and used it for internal inflammation. Roman soldiers carried it in their medical kits. Medieval German monks considered it capable of almost anything. Modern research is now identifying the specific flavonoids and terpenes responsible for what 2,000 years of healers were observing in their patients. Number 1. Raw apple cider vinegar water. Vinegar, specifically raw, fermented, unprocessed vinegar, appears throughout ancient scripture with a specificity that is striking. In the Book of Ruth, chapter 2, Boaz offers Ruth chamet's vinegar to dip her bread in during the harvest. This was a working person's drink on a hot day, and the detail suggests it was in common use for its refreshing, restorative properties. More significantly, in Numbers 6, the Nazirite vow specifically prohibits vinegar made from wine or strong drink, meaning fermented vinegar was a recognized substance with recognized physiological effects, significant enough to be regulated. In Proverbs 1:026, vinegar is referenced as a recognized substance with well-understood properties, but the most extraordinary scriptural vinegar moment is this at the crucifixion, as recorded in John 1:9-9. Soldiers offered Jesus a sponge soaked in oxos, the Greek word for vinegar, almost certainly pasca, the Roman military drink made of water and vinegar. Roman legions carried pasca on campaigns, not as torture, but as their primary hydration supplement. It was the Gatorade of the ancient world. The acetic acid in vinegar was understood, through centuries of military and working-class use, to reduce fatigue, support digestion, and maintain the acid-base balance that hard physical work disrupts. Hippocrates, the father of Greek medicine, documented vinegar preparations for internal complaints and infected wounds in approximately 400 BCE. Ancient Chinese military physicians used rice vinegar for similar purposes. Babylonian records from 5,000 years ago document vinegar's use as a preservative and medicine. Persian medical tradition used circa fermented vinegar for kidney and digestive conditions. This is one of the longest continuously documented medicinal substances in human history, appearing independently in Mesopotamia, Greece, China, Homi, and the ancient Near East. Raf, unfiltered apple cider vinegar, the kind that is cloudy, with visible strands of the mother culture floating in. It is fundamentally different from filtered, pasteurized commercial vinegar. The mother is a living colony of acetic acid bacteria and strands of cellulose containing enzymes, proteins, and probiotics that are destroyed by heat processing. The acetic acid in apple cider vinegar has been studied for its effects on blood glucose regulation. A landmark study published in Diabetes Care found that consuming vinegar before high-carbohydrate meals reduced postprandial blood glucose and insulin spikes by 20 to 34%. Because blood sugar dysregulation is the primary driver of diabetic nephropathy, the leading cause of kidney failure, any intervention that improves glucose metabolism is of direct relevance to kidney health. Acetic acid also modulates the AMPK pathway, a cellular energy-sensing mechanism that, when activated, reduces the inflammatory signaling associated with metabolic kidney disease. Research in PLOS One found that acetic acid consumption reduced inflammatory cytokines in metabolic disease models. Additionally, the malic acid in apple cider vinegar may support citrate levels in urine, contributing to the same anti-stone-forming mechanism as lemon juice. 1 tablespoon, not more, of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar, with visible cloudiness and strands of mother culture, stirred into 8 ounces of room-temperature water. Drink through a straw if possible, as the mild acidity, consumed daily over years, can gradually affect tooth enamel. Never drink it undiluted. Take it either immediately before a meal, which produces the most significant glucose-regulating effect, or upon waking in the morning. The taste is sharp, sour, apple-tinged, with an earthy undertone from the live culture. Start with 1 teaspoon if the tablespoon feels too strong, and work up gradually. Notably, this preparation is almost identical to the pasca carried by Roman soldiers across 3 continents for 400 years of military campaigns. Roman soldiers, Hebrew harvesters, Hippocrates, Babylonian physicians, Persian healers, all of them reached independently for fermented vinegar as a physiological support tool, especially in conditions of heat, exertion, and metabolic stress. The modern science of AMPK activation, postprandial glucose regulation, and acetic acid's effects on inflammatory signaling is now, slowly, explaining what 4,000 years of human observation had already cataloged. They didn't have clinical trials. They had the evidence of what kept people standing. Here is the thing almost nobody tells you, and it matters more than any specific drink on this list. Every single substance we've discussed today, the curcumin in turmeric, the EGCG in green tea, the apigenin in chamomile, the betalains in beets, the acetic acid in apple cider vinegar, the A-type proanthocyanidins in cranberries. All of them are fragile. They are easily destroyed, and our modern food system destroys them almost automatically. Heat above 70 to 80 degrees Celsius degrades catechins in green tea. Pasteurization kills the living bacterial culture in apple cider vinegar. Filtering removes the polyphenol-rich sediment from cranberry juice and olive oil alike. Bleaching and refining strip the betalains from commercial beet products. Industrial processing of turmeric often uses heat treatments that reduce curcumin content before the product ever reaches a shelf. Ancient people, by necessity, prepared everything fresh. They cold steeped. They sun-dried. They fermented in clay and stone. They ground in small batches and used immediately. They weren't doing these things because of food science. They were doing them because they were practical, because the alternative heavily processed food didn't exist. What we have rediscovered, at enormous cost in research funding and laboratory time, is that the way ancient peoples handled their food and medicine was, in many of the ways that matter most, correct. Not perfect, not complete, but astonishingly aligned with what biochemistry is now telling us about compound stability, bioavailability, and the conditions under which plant medicine actually works. So, here is the question worth sitting with after this video ends. If the people who built the pyramids, who wrote the Psalms, who trained the Roman legions, who developed Ayurvedic medicine, if all of them, without comparing notes, arrived at the same plants and the same preparations for the same conditions, what does that tell us about the intelligence built into the natural world itself? If this video opened up something in the way you think about what you drink and why, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more content at this intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science. And leave a comment below, tell us which of these 12 you're going to start with. Or let us know what topic you'd like us to cover next. The conversation is just beginning.